Right, this is lesson 5.1, adding, subtracting, multiplying polynomials. So we have already added and subtracted similar things, so it's going to follow those same types of rules here. So basically, we're just combining like terms, so make sure to pay attention to this sign right here, the fact that this is addition. Do not multiply. So, combining like terms, we have, you can underline, you can circle, you can, whatever it is you need to do to make sure that you add just those like things. So we have a 4x squared plus a negative 2x squared. So that's going to create a 2x squared. We have a negative 9x and we have a negative 5x that we're adding to get negative 14x. And then we have a positive 3 plus a negative 6, and that's going to add to get negative 3. Now be careful, when we come to our next example, that is going to be subtraction. So we are going to have to distribute that negative, and then we can go ahead and combine like terms. So if you want to write it out and then add things, that's fine. Or if you can do it in your head, that's fine too. Just be careful again with that negative, making sure you distribute that first. So if you want to go ahead and distribute the negative here, help you remember that. So we have a 2a cubed plus a 5a minus 7 minus a cubed plus, because again we're distributing, 3a minus 2. So now go ahead and add those like things together to get a cubed plus 8a, and then negative 7 and negative 2 for a negative 9. And there's our final answer. So if you want to go ahead and do 3 and 4, pause, practice those if you feel like you need to, and then check when you're ready. All right, so go ahead and double check your answers for 3 and 4. All right, and we're going to switch to a different here because that Smart Slate wasn't writing very well. So we're going to multiply next. So multiplying polynomial by a monomial using the distributive property and the properties of exponents. So we're going to go ahead and distribute here. So 4y squared times y is 4y cubed. Remember, we add those exponents when we multiply. So next we're going to take 4y squared times 3, and that would give us a 12y squared. And we cannot add those because they are not like terms, so we're done. So moving on to the next one, fg, we're going to distribute to every term there. So we have an fg times a 2fg, so we have a 2 out front. F times f is f squared. G times g is g squared. Next, we're going to take fg times negative 3, f squared and g squared. So negative 3, the f times the f squared is f cubed. The g times the g squared is g cubed. And then lastly, f times f is f squared. G times g cubed is g to the 4th. So go ahead and try number 3 on your own, and then press play when you're ready to check. All right, check your answer for number 3. And then we're going to move on to multiplying two polynomials using the distributive property and multiplying each term in the second polynomial by each term in the first, or using this awesome Punnett square, which will help keep things organized so you make sure to multiply everything. So what we're going to do is we've got 2 things here and we have 3 things here. So we're going to fill in, this is going to be the a, this is going to be the negative 3. It's almost kind of like our factoring square in a sense, but we are actually multiplying instead of factoring. So we've got everything filled in. Everything from above. Now we're going to go ahead and multiply. So a times a squared is a cubed. A times negative 5a is negative 5a squared. A times 2 is 2a, and you don't necessarily have to go in any specific order. Negative 3 times a squared is negative 3a squared. Multiplying negative 3 times negative 5 is positive 15a. Watch those negatives. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. So now if you use this chart, you'll be able to see that the diagonals are creating those like terms, and it's easy to then combine them. So I'm just going to highlight those so you can see them. So now to write our final answer, we have our biggest exponent first, a to the 3rd. Then we're going to add our a squareds here. So negative 3 and negative 5 is negative 8 a squared. All right, and then adding diagonal here, 15a and 2a to make 17a, and then your negative 6. And that's it. So let's go ahead and have you practice doing number 2. Remember to fill in. It doesn't matter which 3 you put here or which 3 you put here, because you're going to multiply everything eventually. So go ahead and try that one, and then check your answer when you're ready. All right, so let's go ahead and check. If you didn't put these 3 up here, if you had them over here again, it doesn't matter the order, but we should have a y to the 4th. We should be adding a negative 7y to the 3rd and a negative y to the 3rd to get negative 8y to the 3rd. Should be adding diagonally this way, 5y squared, positive 7y squared, negative 3y squared to get 9y squared. Negative 5y plus positive 21y to get 16y, and then negative 18. All right, so let's take a look at that last one. We want to fill in our chart. So I'm going to switch out my blank one here. All right, so creating your own little chart. There we go. So we have 2 things, a and 2, that we are multiplying by 3 things, which would be an a squared, a 3a, and a negative 4. All right, so a times a squared is a cubed. A times 3a, 3a squared. Negative 4 times a is negative 4a. 2 times a squared is 2a squared, 6a, and negative 8. So then looking diagonally, we can go ahead and add our pieces. So we have this first, which is our a cubed. We have this next, which is a 5a squared. We have this next, which is a 2a, and then lastly our negative 8 for our final answer. All right, so next page, page 11, we are going to be expanding. So this is still multiplication. We're expanding this binomial. Remember that you cannot just take this exponent and distribute it. You have to FOIL. Okay, so that is the difference when it comes to that multiplying piece. Here we can, because it's like xy squared, which is just like xy times xy, which is x times x is x squared, y times y is y squared. So it does work with that distributing thing when it's multiplication. But remember, when it is addition, we can't, because it's like x plus y squared, well, times itself, x plus y. So then we have to FOIL. We get x squared plus xy plus xy plus y squared. So we end up with that middle term in there. So it does not work to just distribute that. So again, cannot distribute that. So let's take a look at this example. So when we have something to the 3rd, we've got to basically write it out times itself that many times. So let's just write it out in expanded form. Times itself 3 times. Now we're going to multiply 2 of them. So basically we're just going to FOIL those first 2. So x times x is x squared. X times y is xy. In the middle, y times x, we'll just keep it xy. And then y times y is y squared. And then we have our 3rd one there that I just brought down. So just brought that down there. So now we can go ahead and multiply the remaining 2 quantities, these 2. Let's go ahead and use our chart like we did on the last page. So we have an x and a y, and we're going to multiply it by 3 things here. So my 3 things were x squared, 2xy, and then a y squared. So adding those two together to get that 2xy. So now going ahead and multiplying like we did on the last page, x cubed, 2x squared y, putting the x first and then the y squared, x squared first and then the y, because when we multiply we just put them next to each other. So 2 and then x, and then we have a y times a y to get the y squared, and then y squared times y is y to the third. So now we can go ahead and add those like things together. Again, diagonally it's creating those like terms. So x cubed, then we add this one and this one, so 2 plus 1 would make 3x squared y. 2xy squared and 1xy squared makes 3xy squareds. And then the last thing there is our y to the third. Okay, so taking it one step at a time, on the next one, we'll do this one together and then I'll have you try one. This one to the fourth, so writing it in expanded form is 2x minus 1 times 2x minus 1 times 2x minus 1 times 2x minus 1. So the easy way to do this is to multiply these two together and these two together. And then finally we'll multiply the last two things. So foiling here and foiling here, which we should get the same thing, right? Since we're multiplying the same thing here times the same thing here. So 2x times 2x is 4x squared. 2x times negative 1. And there as well. And then last, positive 1. So we get a 4x squared minus 4x plus 1, which is the same thing we know we're going to get over here. 4x squared minus 4x plus 1. So now the last step is just to multiply those two things together. So we're going to use our chart to multiply these three things times these three things to get our final answer. So I'm going to make that chart. So we want to have 4 things. Probably should have used a ruler. Okay. So putting in a 4x squared and a 4x and a 1, a 4x squared, negative 4x and a 1. Okay, now let's go ahead and multiply. Here we get a 16x to the fourth, negative 16x to the third, and a positive 4x squared. Here we get a negative 16x to the third. We get a positive 16x squared, a negative 4x. So again, I'm taking this outer one times this upper one, and together they're meeting to multiply to get this number. So up here, this one times the 1 to get a 4x squared, a negative 4x times 1 to get a negative 4x, and a 1 times 1 to get 1. So now, last thing, combine those like terms. In this direction there's, and this direction there's the x squared, and this direction there's just the x's. So diagonally, that's where we're combining those like terms. So first part of our answer, we're going to write it over here, is a 16x to the fourth, negative 16 is negative 32, x to the third. Again, we're just adding the coefficients, and then we keep that like term. So plus 24x squared minus 8x and plus 1. Okay, try that next one, number 1, on your own, and then we'll check. All right, so there's a whole lot of stuff here. Let's go ahead and just take a look at the first thing of the expanded. So there it is, written out 3 times. We're going to go ahead and take the first 2 things and multiply them by foiling. And then we now can multiply everything by using our chart. So here's the first 3 and the upper part. So I just rewrote them as the upper part. And then on my other side, I'm going to go ahead and have those other 2 things, the binomial 3x and 2y. And then I'm going to go ahead and multiply everything in that chart. So there it is multiplied, and then I'm going to combine my like terms going in that diagonal direction. So those are alike, and go ahead and switch to a different color. That might help as well. And then we've got these are alike going that direction. So adding those like terms, we get our final answer written down here at the bottom.